Hello friends, myself Vikas Shakya. I welcome you all on my channel Varteta Learning Platform. And from today onwards, we are going to discuss about the classes in Python. And this is the part one of the classes in Python. And about the classes, you might have some basic idea about the classes, like you might have studied about the classes in C++ or in Java or whatever language you worked on. So in Python, how they are different and how we create our classes, how we declare our classes, how we define them, and what is the use of classes in Python, that we will discuss in this series of classes in Python, right? So there may be around 5 to 6 videos on classes, and they will be smart videos so that you can uh, easily grasp it. So let's start with the first part. So let me open the editor. So this is the editor which I'm using. So very soon I'm going to install the PyCharm editor, which is used for the Python programming. So in this one, I'm going to discuss basic things about the classes in Python. Like you can see the first line. You can see this is the line where I'm trying to declare a class. The name of the class is my class, and this is the keyword class, which is used to declare the class. And you put the semicolon to start to mark the beginning of the class, right? Just like the functions and uh, other modules in the Python, this beginning and the end is marked by the this tab key. So you can see that after this colon, it automatically places a tab to mark the beginning of your class, right? So everything which is tabbed after this will be inside the class, and as soon as you will come here, the class will end. Okay, so this is the way you declare the class. And what is this pass? This pass is a keyword. Basically, it shows that this class has nothing, no methods, nothing. There is no constructor. In fact, there are no constructors in Python explicitly defined. But this keyword, which is pass, you must need to remember that this is to indicate that there is nothing in this class. You don't have to see anything in the class, right? So this is the way you create an empty class which cannot be basically inherited. It cannot be called for any methods or anything, right? It's just an empty class, right? We will see that whether we will be able to create its object or not. Okay, so let's see if we can create an object of this class or not. If you have to create the object of this class, you just need to declare the variable and then just need to give the name of the class, my class, right? If you do like this, then let's see what happens. Okay, so you can create it. It's just an empty class, right? So if you write it like print m dot underscore class, this class keyword is basically a keyword. This double underscore class double underscore, this is basically used to find out the information about the class. What is the name of the class and other metadata information, right? So you can press F5 and you can run this program, and you will be able to see that inside the main module I have a class, my class. So whatever I'm trying to print, that is this one, class main.class, right? So this is the way it works. So this is an empty class, so this is not a kind of class which has something to display or which has something to uh, work on, right? It cannot be inherited as well. We will see these things in the later videos, like why it cannot be inherited. But for today, for the beginning, you can just remember that this is also a way of defining a class which doesn't contain anything. It's just an empty class. Then let's come to the next class, which is of some use for us. So you can see this is the class dummy object. So I have created dummy object class, and this is the description of this class, basically the doc string. About the doc string we have already discussed. So this is just a dummy class. This is just a doc string, right? And then what is this? Init self. I have defined a method double underscore init double underscore. Basically, this is a predefined method. You need to define it in your class, and this basically acts as a constructor, but in fact this is not a constructor. Please listen this carefully. This acts as a constructor, but it is not a constructor, because when you create the object, before this function gets called, your object is already created. In case of C++ or in case of Java, when you create a class, then you need to call the constructor, and after the constructor is called, then only your object is created. But here, when you create an object like this, here it is d is equal to dummy object. So here I'm creating an object, and when I'm creating an object, dummy object, then in this case object has already been created, but immediately after the object creation, this function, this init method will be called, right? This is called just immediately after the object creation. And object creation, the constructor things, these are not there. Those are all handled by the Python runtime environment itself, right? So this is not a constructor. This init is not, never should be considered as a constructor. And you should always remember that this is only the first function which gets called after your object is created, right? So after d is equal to dummy object, this object will be created and a reference will be assigned to d, and as soon as this line will be executed, just after this line, this init method for this object will be called. You don't need to call it explicitly, right? So this will be automatically called. Okay, so let's see what happens. So when I call this, when I just create an object, after the object will be created, this should print this, the dummy object was created even before this was called. Okay, so let's see, dummy object was created even before this was called. So this is the way it works. And let's see something else. This I'm trying to print the class name, and here I'm trying to print the documentation, the doc string, which should be this. This is just a dummy class. I'm calling it on the class level, so this is class. If I call it at the function level, then this will be printing this. This is just a function inside this class, dummy object class. I have defined one more function which has the name dummy func, and this has the description. This is a dummy function of this class, right? So if you call, let me open all the statements. If you call this d.dummyfunc and then .doc, then this will display this thing, right? So this is the way you can display everything. This is the way you can deal with every value and every object of the class, right? So in this first line, I just need to revise it. In the first class, dummy object will be created and a reference will be assigned in the D. And then when you will print it class using this keyword under double underscore class double underscore, then in that case, it will display about the class, like what is the name of the class, basically the metadata of the class, right? And then it's like I'm trying to print the documentation of this class, and then I'm calling this function dummy func, and then I'm calling d.dummyfunc.doc to display the description of this function, right? I will discuss about this self just after running this program. So let's first run this. Okay, so you can see that the first object was called dummy object, and as soon as this was called, dummy object was created even before this was called. This has been displayed, and after that the metadata of the class, like class main dot dummy object, this has been printed, and then this was printed, which was the documentation of this class. This is just a dummy class. This was printed here through this statement, right? And after that, I call this d.dummyfunc. So what it will be printing, this dummy func will be you printing like you call the dummy func of dummy object class, and the values are values I will print later. I will show you. I will show you what I was trying to do there, but that was, you know, half cooked. So you call the dummy func of dummy class object, it should be printed. So it was printed here. You call the dummy func of dummy object class. Let me run it again so that you can see it clearly. Okay, so you call the dummy func of dummy class object, and then I'm trying to printing the dummy func.documentation. So I'm just trying to print the documentation about this function dummy func. So here you can see that the description of this function has been displayed here. Okay, so this is the way it works, and I hope you can understand these basic things. This is the starting of the concept of the classes, so you need to just remember these things, and these are the basic things about the classes. And now let's discuss about the self. You can see that when I was calling it dummy object, then in that case I was not passing any argument, right? So this self is the very first argument in any of the function or in any of the methods inside the class. And for self you don't need to pass anything. If you are expecting anything else like A, B, C, right? So you are expecting three things, or you are expecting two things here, right? So in that case you need to pass two arguments here, like 5 and 7, right? And then here comes self in the function. So in case of other kind of functions as well, this self is the very first argument and you don't need to pass it, and that is why you were not able to get any error here, any interpreting error you were not able to find. It was working perfectly fine. But now if I don't give this 5 and 7, I just try to do this, then in that case you will be able to see that missing two required positional arguments are A and B. It is giving you an error, right? So you need to use these A and B, and you need not use these A and B. Basically you need to pass the values for these A and B. So now this will not give any problem, right? So no problems. Now what we can do with this A and B, just like the method, just like the classes in Java and C++, you must have not must have, basically you might have some variables declared, some objects inside the class for the other classes, right? So you might have seen those things like declaring variables and declaring some pointers like that. You might have done if you have worked in C++, in C++ for classes. So just like we have the variables there inside a class, we can have the variables here as well inside the class. But you don't need to explicitly define them outside. You just need to do like x self dot x is equal to A, self dot y is equal to B. So basically self refers to the current object. So here I am trying to work with the object D. So in this case, if I call this function, if I do the dummy object, then this self will be referring to the current object's reference, which is D, right? So it will be assigning the value of A and B to X and Y, and these X and Y are not basically the variables defined inside this init method. These are available inside this class, dummy object. So X and Y are the variables of dummy class object. So if I try to print them here, X, Y, then in that case it will be printing, right? And the values are X, Y. So these two values will be printed here after I will call this function dummy func, right? So this X and Y is just like the variable declared inside this class dummy object, right? So let me just run it. Okay, name X is not defined. You need to call it self.x and self.y. Okay, so this is the way you need to provide it. Use self, right? So when you use self, then in that case this will be available inside your function which has been defined inside this class, right? So these are the basics, and I will not discuss more today about the classes. We will move ahead with the classes in the next video, and in the next video I will show you how to instantiate the class objects and how you can call the different methods in more details, right? So till then I would like to request you that you can practice it yourself, and please like, subscribe my channel and like my videos, share with your friends, and we will meet soon in the next video. Till then, have a nice day. Bye bye.